What is up, guys? Welcome to a brand new video. So today we're doing something brand new, fresh idea. I've never done this before. We're checking out the best champions in every roles climate. I couldn't even do that. Basically, it's who is much stronger now and why they're winning so many games. Timestamps to the roles are going to be in the description, plus a list of all the champions in this video if that's what you want to see. Now, before we get into the roles, something new I actually do want to try is the best bans for this patch. Hopefully you like this extra. If not, tell me to shove it in the comments. The top 5 bans in my opinion right now are Camille, Graves, Katarina, Rengar, and Zed. All of these have the potential to snowball hard early and solo carry a game if they're fed. The issue is if they aren't in your lane, you can't really stop them getting fed in the first place. The next 5, kind of personal preference more, is Lulu, Yasuo, Ahri, Warwick, and Fiora. So all of these are high performers in their role, which make the game much more difficult. It depends on who you want to pick yourself, but these would be really good bans still. Right, so first up is top lane then. Number 2 spot is going to go to Renekton. Lethality was nerfed, which means other lane bullies are coming back up a bit instead, and we're entering into bruiser territory top lane between like full damage and full tanks. Further as well is only 4 stacks for him, and he can get that super fast, which buffs almost all of his damage. It's really hard to trade against him because of that. He's better late game now as well with his recent changes, especially his ultimate damage ticking for a ton in teamfights, but even getting 64 more AD from Further is a massive boost. The good side is he crushes almost every lane matchup and does a crap ton of damage, plus he has healing on top of that. He still has a decent mid to late game where he can actually carry and close the game out as well. The bad side is some matchups are just really hard, like Pantheon and Swain come to mind, a bunch of harass before he can really all in, and he only has 1 gap closer. If they get away from you the first time, then it's hard to get back onto them, just like with the Darius basically. Number 1 is still going to be Fiora, probably the best carry top you can play with an amazing late game. She's still decent in the lane phase, but awesome with items. Further has definitely made her better, right? Stacks it very fast, and again makes her trading and late game stronger than it used to be. Trinity Force, by the way, is so good on Fiora now that tanks aren't around as much. Black Cleaver is good versus tanks, but Trinity versus carry adds way more burst and damage. It's insane. You have good trading and sustain lane, which in turn makes you a monster 1v1 later into the game with a ton of mobility thrown on top. You're strong split pushing or team fighting. You're very well rounded for a damage carry champion. The bad side is if you miss time your W, then it can actually just lose you fights. Like if you can auto attack, then you can proc vitals and lifesteal and heal, but if you get locked down, you're super easy to kill. Mid game as well is not the best. You're decent early if you snowball, but if not, you really need like 3 items to kick into major gear. The one to watch for top lane would be Rumble though, probably the most consistent top laner you can actually play. He's a bit weird, a bit awkward to use properly, but he's still really strong, and at higher ranks I reckon he's the best all-around choice you can play. Jungle next then, and the second spot is Graves, but for different reasons than before. Plus actually, if this was purely for high elo, so like Diamond Plus, I'd reckon he'd be first instead. The lethality build just isn't as good anymore, so we're back to more bruiser build, which is relying on auto attacks plus your burst, so it's not just like a one-shot combo. I know a lot of you will ask me why is that a good thing, but it's because we're seeing more bruisers and healing supports who buff Graves, like another AD carry. You have like a Sona, right? Designed to keep the AD carry alive and buff their damage. Well, now she has 2 AD carries to buff and keep alive, so they're both doing more damage. He can still one-shot early with this build anyway, but his mid to late game is going to be more well-rounded now as well with his autos. You do have really good farming, decent ganks, and a good team fight as well, so it means more gold overall, and that is more items. You have really good synergy with the other meta picks, especially Lulu, by the way. Lulu and Graves is disgusting, which naturally makes him stronger. The bad side is you have no crowd control or engage. You're basically another AD, so team comp kind of suffers a bit. You also aren't a massive gank threat early, so if your team craps a bed, there's not really much you can do to help. I know most English people will call Warwick because we have a town called that, but Warwick is going to be number 1. As we said, probably have him number 2 if this was higher ranks. Your healing and damage is pretty nuts, especially when he gets low health. Actually, he's not that good versus burst because he can't auto and heal enough, but meta doesn't really have that much of that now. You're tanky enough to engage properly, which is needed more now. The top laner's meta has kind of shifted, and supports are normally going to be healers. You're good farming in the jungle, you're easy to play, but you're very effective. Like it comes with your high damage and amazing synergy with attack speed. It's why Trinity Force is so good on him if you can get ahead and justify buying it. You're also a team pick, like you can gank early, you can supply the damage, you can actually carry, but he still helps his team as well. Like it's not as selfish a pick as Graves. The bad is you're super easy to kill early if he gets behind and he doesn't get to his tanky items, and your ultimate is actually kind of hard to hit sometimes, but easy to flash as well anyway, which takes a lot away from you. Like Zed can ulti it, for example, as well. The one to watch out for is actually Nunu, which is kind of weird, right? Like he's really good with the new Stoneborn Pact. People are constantly like perma healing off of it, and it's also a good counter to crit and auto AD carries coming back. Remember when Nunu was overpowered? It was mainly because he got percentage health from his consume. Well, now he gets 5% from Pact, so there you go. So moving on to support for a change. Third, actually, you support main should be happy. We're actually seeing one of the most important roles this patch, I think, with supports. The second spot is Sona, especially at lower rank. She is a beast right now. She has it all. poke, heals, crowd control, a good lane, and a good team fight. A lot of it is synergy with items, like you have your W shield and locket shield, right? Redemption heal and W heal. The sensor attack speed and on-hit lifesteal with your Q boosting even more damage. Your W shield, by the way, applies sensor to everyone. It's ridiculous. Ardent Sensor is a very strong item at the moment in this AD carry meta, and you should really rush it as your first big item every single game. The good side is you're able to protect your AD, but also get them kills. You can go from like sitting back and healing to just suddenly Q power chord and ultimate in their face. Late game, you are one of the best. Your aura spam becomes too much to deal with. Like the cooldown is reduced with your ultimate rank on top of your normal cooldown reduction. The downside is you're very low health, and aggressive lanes are coming back a bit more now. I think you're also reliant on your team. You have no real engage, and sensor isn't overpowered if your AD doesn't know how to right click. That leads nicely on to our number one, which is Lulu, basically the high elo version of Sona. You give more damage in team fights and there's more buffing. It's much better for an AD carry, but if your AD is crap, then buffs don't matter anyway. You can stop these more aggressive lanes coming back now with polymorphs and early damage. Your ultimate as well is the best cock block against assassins like Rengar or Zed, which makes diving onto an AD even harder. You also have okay damage in the lane phase. You can actually play kind of aggressive, but then obviously a godlike team fight defensive wise. Sensor is ridiculous on her, right? It's your picks damage plus sensor attack speed plus shields plus the attack speed from Lulu, which means your AD does so much more, like more autos, more crits, more damage, more picks damage, and quicker further stacking. That is a lot of stuff to actually buff your AD with, but the downside is your damage falls off pretty hard. Unlike Sona, who continues to pound people, it's kind of the price you pay for godlike protection. Because of that, you're kind of more team reliant, but you can actually keep the worst players alive. One to watch is going to be Braum. He's really strong with the Stoneborn Pact and synergy with other meta ADs like Lucian and Ezreal. Your stun is amazing in team fights. He's one of the best team fight supports, I think, but he gets bullied in the lane phase. It's not as bad if you can get ganks because you can set them up, but if you're left alone, you're probably going to suffer. We're going to move on to the mid lane now, and number 2 is actually Anivia. Ever since lethality was nerfed, Anivia has become one of the best mid lane champions, kind of flying under the radar. There are a lot of good mids you can play, but I think it's time to talk about her when she's crushed it for like 6 weeks. She's doing really well in the early lane phase, especially against weaker laners. So like Ryze, LeBlanc, and Lux and stuff, she is crushing these guys because they're so squishy. Part of that is her amazing burst damage, and a lot of it is from her base as well. Like items obviously help, but they're not really needed to do well. You have the control with your ultimate, your stun, your walls, plus the egg gives her a ton of utility on top of everything. Even has good wave clear if you max your Q first actually. The bad side is you have very high cooldowns. You use them, but then you have to wait for your spells afterwards. Like teams often don't get that, and they kind of rush in because you burst someone even though you can't really do much more for a while. You're also immobile, and if they are running some crowd control, then you can't really do much to dodge it. Like think Nautilus and Maokai being less popular is going to help a lot with that. Ahri is going to be our number 1 though, and I know I have a hard on for her, but she's just too good. She's one of the most popular champions and still has one of the highest win rates. Like that's when you know something is way too strong. Your damage is really good, but she covers all bases like wave clear, sustain, good laning, crowd control, burst, sustain damage, mobility, roaming. You are kind of weak to burst and crowd control, but there isn't much of that around right now in this meta anyway. Honestly, it's very hard to lose lane as Ahri, to be honest. Like AD assassins are nerfed and not that common anymore, and that was your biggest problem. You're good early and still just a good late game as well. She doesn't have that obvious weakness to exploit until you get to much higher elo play, in my opinion. I'm kind of struggling to come up with downsides, but one, Fizz is becoming more popular and will wreck Ahri a bit more. As sad as it is as well, a downside is that she'll start to get banned more and more soon, in my opinion, so you can't really play her as much. Speaking of Fizz, he is my one to watch. He's doing well since the buffs to him and nerfs to lethality. He's risen up as one of the best assassins at the moment, and the meta is perfect for him. Loads of Ryze, Lux, Orianna to prey on and get fed before roaming around and just killing everybody. So AD carry is last then because we did a top 5 on it yesterday. If you want a more in-depth look at this role, then check that out. Caitlyn is kicking us off at number 2. Partly it's a support meta, like healers are buffing her auto attacks, partly games are going later, and partly because of the new warlords and fervor, which has made crit builds better. She's the most reliable champion you can play who can do well early, mid, and late game. Like early you have the range advantage, mid you have combos and traps to rely on, and late game you just right click to win the game. Like that's all while being safe with your range and her net. I think this is really valuable actually, especially at lower ranks. You're one of the best late game champions, so if in doubt, if your team's completely screwed it up, farm up, get your 6 items, and you at least stand a chance to carry the game. The bad side is mid game you're not that good unless you get fed or you combo properly, which sometimes can be pretty hard in the middle of team fights. I'm talking about like trap and net at the same time, by the way, for combos. That means Twitch is going to be our number 1, who's a better version of Caitlyn, basically. Like fervor is amazing on him. You stack poison, you stack your fervor at the same time. There's nothing different to do, but you have more damage on your E naturally. You are the best late game AD in the entire game right now, and it's all from right clicking. You just have your Q attack speed, your poison, fervor, crits, really high range. You hit multiple people with your ultimate and with runins. Fervor has made made him better early, which is a big point because he's so good late game. Buffing early game just makes him such a strong pick overall. You can trade more and use your W to wave clear, kind of. You roam around though, you get yourself fed. You don't have to rely on your team as much as other picks. The bad side is you have no mobility, but is that even a downside when you have this covered up by Lulu and Sona and their shields and heals and buffs and stuff? The one to watch is Kalista though. She's much better this patch and really good with healing or aggressive supports. Like, I'd expect to see a lot more of her soon. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for watching until the end, and let me know what you think of the best bans part of this video. But for now, I'll actually leave you with the robots.